finally have the review for Michael Jackson's History for you guys today. Let's jump into that. Hey everybody, welcome back to Prince's Friend, exploring music through Prince. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Prince's Friend YT on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So it's been a while since I did my last Michael Jackson review, and there have been a lot of things that have happened in between there. My schedule just filled up entirely and it was hard to get to this review. But we're here now. So let's talk about Michael Jackson's History. It was released on June 20th, 1995. So its anniversary is about to come up here in not too long. It was Michael Jackson's 5th adult album on Epic, but his 9th album overall. The full name of the album is History, Past, Present, and Future Book 1. I know, it's a mouthful, but we never got a Book 2. I was really hoping that we would. This album is packaged as 2 discs on CD, each one with 15 songs. The first disc is actually kind of a greatest hits. It has songs like Billie Jean, The Girl Is Mine, Rock With You, pretty much all those big songs that you've kind of already heard. It was an odd choice for me, but maybe they were considering doing a greatest hits but didn't think that it would sell on its own amongst all of the allegations and stuff that were going on around that time. But the second disc is why we're here, and it was his album, History, which in my opinion is probably Michael Jackson's best album. Done. Close the book. Like other Michael Jackson albums, this album did have a multitude of singles, 7 to be exact. But unlike his previous albums, they received varying responses. Some were amazing and others failed to even chart. That's new for Michael Jackson. The album did have actually a lot of different themes going on though, like injustice, environmentalism, isolation, paparazzi, mistreatment by the media, all created in response to the child molestation accusations that were being hurled at him in 1995, and his treatment by the police. And even if you don't know all of these things that were going on with Michael Jackson, if you listen to the album, it spells it out pretty easily. This is Michael Jackson's most aggressive album that he released his entire career. But instead of using leather jackets and spikes to make himself seem like he's hard, we're basically just greeted with a Michael Jackson who's been through some stuff. You can feel his anger on this album and it feels authentic, it's not staged. Michael Jackson wrote and produced the majority of the songs on this album. He also co-wrote and co-produced with some other pretty big names on this album, such as Notorious B.I.G. and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who obviously we all love. But let's jump into the review and let's listen to the tracks. If you haven't heard this album, I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised by how cool these tracks are. So Scream was the very first single off of History, with Childhood as the B-side. I know, odd choice. And it peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Top 100. It also won a Grammy for Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals, which was not a category I knew existed. And it still holds the record for the most expensive music video ever filmed, at $7 million. The last and probably the most significant thing that I want to mention about this song is that it was a duet with his sister Janet, which was an amazing thing for pop culture. Scream starts off the album with a raw and intense angry energy and an anime scream, and honestly that fits the album to a T. The song is about wanting to shout out about all of the injustice and the mistreatment and the attacks that you have to endure if you're a celebrity. And obviously Michael endured quite a bit of that. It's delivered with a sense of disgust, which I think really fits the song as well. Janet and Michael's voice mix together pretty nicely, actually, and she matches his anger, which is good. And I feel like her lending her voice to this track amidst, again, all of the allegations, was essentially Janet showing her support for her brother, as she actually wasn't too keen on giving a ton of interviews about the subject. And I remember when this video premiered and everybody was like, oh my god, it's gonna be the best video ever because they're gonna dance together. And I remember they're gonna sing together and they're gonna dance together. These are two of like the best dancers ever and they're gonna dance together. It's gonna be amazing. And then it was like 10 seconds of the video and I was like, oh, really? But guess what? Everybody still lost their minds. I couldn't think of a better starting track for this album. So track 2 is They Don't Really Care About Us, and it was the 5th single, and it got to number 30 in the US. And this song was essentially Michael claiming his blackness and using that blackness as a weapon. I actually dug this quite a bit, but a lot of people clowned on him mostly due to colorism. But it is also true that back in the day, Michael Jackson was almost like OJ in a way, where he would say, "I'm not black, I'm Michael Jackson." But once he started experiencing a lot of the atrocities that other black people experience on a daily basis when they're not Michael Jackson, I think it kind of snapped him out of that. And this is another song written from a place of anger, even to the point where Michael Jackson decided to include an anti-Semitic slur in the song, where he says, "Jew me, sue me, kick me, kike me." Like, okay, that was a little far. And I remember that I learned the word kike from this song, which was weird. Now, he did apologize and scrubbed it from the album, but he didn't even scrub it in like a good way. I was hoping that maybe he would write new words and he would do something like that, but instead now it says, "Bjit me, sue me, kick me, blah, blah, me," and I'm like, oh God, really? In my mind, it does kind of degrade the quality of the song. I get why they did it that way. It was a lot easier to do that than to go in and re-record the song. But honestly, the beat is good, the lyrics are great, but he's being bold and daring on this track. Really good song. So Stranger in Moscow was the 6th single, and it reached number 90 on the top 100. And this song is about a fall from grace, that realization that you are alone, like a stranger in Moscow. It's weird, but it's also like a crazy good name for this song. Because if you imagine Moscow, you think of snow, you think of gruff people speaking a language that you likely don't understand. You're a stranger, so no one is showing you any kindness. Again, this is kind of feeding on some stereotypes of what it is like with Russian people and whatnot. But it also evokes a certain imagery that I think Michael was really good at putting out there. And honestly, I feel like this song was maybe written during some sort of suicide attempt or something like that. That's just my thoughts, because the song evokes that type of feeling that like, there's nothing good and I am all alone, and why would I continue? So, really good song, very deep. It's got a simple beat in the background, and it can't be understated like how that kind of beat really accents the vocals on the track. Just great song. So This Time Around was the 4th single, but didn't chart in the US. But I actually really dig this song, because it's kind of the perfect follow-up to Stranger in Moscow, which is about being in your thoughts and feeling depressed and, oh my God, the world is so hard to be a part of. But then you get to This Time Around, and you're like, but wait, no. This time around, I'm not gonna let it go down like that, and I'm gonna fight back. And I know that a lot of people are now waiting for me to kind of go crazy over the Notorious B.I.G. being on the track. I know that everybody's like, oh, are you Biggie, are you Tupac? Like, oh, these are 2 of the best rappers of all time, but I mean, I was never really a fan of Notorious B.I.G., but I think he comes on, he does a good rap. He's not necessarily my type of flow that I like in my rap, but he does good, nothing mind-blowing. It's a great song overall, though. This crying earth, this weeping shore. EARTHSONG was the 3rd single, and I don't know if you would have guessed this about me, but EARTHSONG is my favorite song on this album. It's about acknowledging the horror that humanity has racked on the world. And it's got the same classic theme of making a change and making the world a better place. But literally, this is the only song that I can think of from Michael Jackson that doesn't play upon all of the same tropes that he uses in a lot of his other music. He breaks his own mold with this song, and I think that's why it stands out so much to me. EARTHSONG doesn't have a chorus. It just has a haunting tune that he sings between the verses. But the song continues to escalate and escalate and escalate until the end. He's shouting, and it is just an amazing climactic song 5 tracks in. His voice sounds amazing on it, the instrumentality is bonkers, and the sentiment is moving. EARTHSONG is amazing. honestly, DS is the first track on the album where it starts to slip just a tad. All of the songs so far have been amazing, and then we get this one. I think it's because DS is more pointed at a particular person. It's an attack song, and that's not really in Michael Jackson's wheelhouse. It's one thing to talk generally about how angry you are, and there's another thing to have a song directed at a particular person. A lot of people believe that it was directed at Thomas Snedden, who was the lead prosecutor against Michael Jackson at the time. But you can't use his name in a song. I believe that that's like slander. I think that's the term. So instead, Michael uses DS, Dom S. Sheldon, which is very close to Thomas Snedden. But honestly, the reason that I have an issue with it is mostly musical. It's an odd choice. Slash is on there and he adds a pretty cool guitar solo, but the tempo of the song seems like it should have just been sped up ever so slightly and it might have been a better song. Otherwise, it drags. It feels like he's angry, but he doesn't know what to do with himself. Maybe that was the point, but this is usually the first song on the album that sometimes I skip. So Money is a great song, I'll just say that right up front. And the thing that every MJ fan has said that his accusers are looking for was money. And in this song, Michael Jackson's pretty much saying the same thing. And money is interpreted to have been directed at Evan Chandler, who is the father of the kid who was accusing him. And honestly, even if you take it out of that context, this is one of my favorite songs on the album. From the beat to the chorus to the message, it just kind of has it all around. It's just an amazing track. Anything for money. And it has a bunch of those that, you know, people like to mimic. I like to mimic it as well. And honestly, it's like if you were to say what is like a really good quintessential Michael Jackson song, I might say Money is a really good one. It is kind of a staple song for me in terms of my loving Michael Jackson's music. Come together. So Michael Jackson was never somebody who was like particularly well known for his covers. His thing was really original songs, but then again, he owns the Beatles catalog, and he didn't have to pay any royalties to have those songs on his albums, so why wouldn't he do that? Come Together is one of Lennon and McCartney's most popular songs. It's been covered to death, and Michael Jackson does one here, and he does a really good version of it. I think it's a standout. It's a great cover. It has classic MJ style on it. But I do have one major gripe, and it's something that other people who have covered the song too have done, and it's changing the lyrics. And this song has weird lyrics in it, and people are like, that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, but those are the lyrics though. But there's a line in the song where it's, hold you in his armchair, you can feel his disease. And Michael Jackson, in addition to a bunch of other people, say, hold you in his arms till you can feel his disease. And that just always irks me. I have no reason to really not like the song, but that just makes me mad. His version's good though. So the next song is You Are Not Alone. It was his second single. It debuted at #1. Historically, it was the first song to ever debut at #1, so that definitely says something. The lyrics were written by R. Kelly, but Michael Jackson was sued for plagiarism over the melody. Some Belgian gentlemen said that they wrote the melody, and the Belgian courts ruled in their favor and said that it was plagiarized and banned it from radio play in Belgium. So that's kind of interesting. All of that said, I never really liked this song, and I swear when I watch the video for this song, you can see Michael Jackson's ball sack. I'm just saying, I'm gonna move on.
Have you seen my childhood? I'm searching for...
So the next track is Childhood, and it's funny because a lot of MJ fans that I know that I've talked to actually don't like this song. They say it's cheesy or it's melodramatic or it's maybe a little too on the nose, but I always really dug it. People always ask MJ why he was the way he was, and as a true artist, he wrote a song about it. I think it spells it out pretty nicely. And to me, it honestly sounds like a really cool solo in a musical, like Michael Jackson on Broadway. The only thing that felt weird to me about this song was the fact that it was the B-side to Scream. So I can imagine having Scream and buying Scream, and then Childhood being the B-side, and I would just be like, what? That's an odd choice. Good song, though.
scream, don't make it factual.
So now we're gonna get into a trio of songs that are produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. And it's honestly easy to tell. This one and Scream and Money, all of the really, really good tracks on this album are pretty much done by them, which is a cool thing, actually.
So I'll take that and use that as the main foundation for the track and build all the sounds around that.
And Tabloid Junkie is directed at those people who read stuff in magazines, who hear the rumors, and just believe them whole cloth without doing any investigation, without checking anything out. That seems very relevant nowadays, doesn't it? I like that the song actually calls out some of the more ridiculous ones, like him sleeping in an oxygen chamber. Like, that's just dumb. But if somebody thinks that and then writes it, there's gonna be a bunch of people who just take that as fact, and that is kind of the world we live in today. And also in 1995. So I love how Too Bad starts off with some street rappers and they're just kind of freestyling. One of the guys goes into a different version of Run DMC's King of Rock. Like, I kind of dig the feel. And then it goes into a song that is kind of a standout on the album, Too Bad. And it's weird because I don't normally like song sequels, but my research has said that this was kind of a spiritual successor to Bad, but with a lot less hidden messages. Instead, Michael Jackson is essentially saying, you're trying to come after me, but too bad you ain't gonna do it. And then Shaq comes on the track. Around the time in 1995, he had a blossoming rap career that didn't really go anywhere, but he was able to finagle himself on Michael Jackson's album, which, good for you, Shaq. But honestly, being on the same album as Notorious B.I.G., even if I'm not necessarily a fan of Notorious B.I.G., you can see the talent there, and really comparing the two, you see how green Shaq was. Despite that, really good song. I dig this song quite a bit. And then we get to History, which has always been a weird track for me, mostly because it feels like two different songs. It starts off with a bunch of newsreel type stuff, it ends with that too, but then it launches into like a deeply funky verse with Michael Jackson. He's singing it with attitude and he's killing it. She got the band back. Like, it's awesome. But then the chorus goes into like this sweet sounding message of stories that you tell and how it shapes the people. And like, it just seemed really disjointed and not necessarily the same song. So what ends up happening is I find myself jamming out to half of the song, but I only get two pieces of the part that I like, and then the rest of the song is the part that I don't really like. And then we get some more newsreels, and then it goes into the next track.
Somebody killed little Susie, the girl with the tune, who sings in the
And Little Susie is about a little girl named Susie, I know, go fig, who was killed. And it kind of tells the story of how it all happened. It's the ultimate climactic song on History, because it's MJ saying that regardless of what people are saying about him and all of the lawsuits and all the tabloids, that this is still a world where children are dying systematically. And this girl in the story died because no one cared. It was through neglect. It's a sad song, but one that I think has a really good point and a good placement on this album. He sings it great. It almost sounds like he might have cried a couple of times on the song, which we do know that he has done previously when he sings a really emotional song. I really, really love Little Susie.
smile and maybe tomorrow.
And then we get to the finale, Smile. It was the 7th and final single, also did not chart. Smile is a well-known song from Charlie Chaplin days, and the message is pretty simple. Regardless of how terrible life is, if you smile, things can get better. I love the song, though its placement at the end of History is a little bit odd. Logically, it makes sense, especially if you're paying attention to the inner story being told through the series of songs. But also, it's kind of a downer note to end on, and the album starts so energetically and then ends with Little Susie and Smile, so it ends down. I might have possibly switched this song and maybe Childhood, which has a more of a musical kind of uplifting feel at the end, but even the way that Michael Jackson delivers this song, it's like with sniffles and like he's sad. So my final thoughts is that this is my favorite album from Michael Jackson still. At the same time, the album really does kind of jump around a bit, and it does make it a little bit more difficult to enjoy as a one full listen through. I find myself kind of cherry picking what songs I feel like hearing at a particular time. This honestly I feel was the last great Michael Jackson album. He did some other stuff after this, Blood on the Dance Floor, Invincible. He did some good stuff, but this is the album from Michael Jackson that I constantly compared other Michael Jackson music to. This type of music, the aggression, the truth, is what I always think of when I think of Michael Jackson. So I would give History 4.5 stars out of 5. But what would you guys give History? Let me know down in the comments. Also let me know what your favorite track was, if you would rearrange the tracks. Let me know. I want to discuss the album down in the comments. Otherwise, don't forget to check us out on social media at PrincessFriendYT. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification, and check out our Patreon at patreon.com/princessfriend. Otherwise, may you live to see the dawn. I love you all.